Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. This is our Basket and Barometer edition with our returning guest, Diane Worrell, for February 2026. Hi, Di. How are you doing?
Thanks, Simon. How are you?
Yep, good, thank you. So we're going to focus on February 26, the wettest February since records began, just to give some context to the dark thunderclouds that may be forming.
Yes, it wasn't great. And of course, rain is never good for retail. And that came through in the data for February in both footfall and sales. So footfall is measured by Sensomatic, which is footfall into stores, dropped across all the three retail channels. So that's high streets, shopping centres and retail parks. And actually in retail parks, it dropped by over 3%, which is the biggest drop since January last year. And in high streets, it dropped by over 5%. And across the three, it dropped by 4.7%. And that drop mirrors the decline in sales in the high street as measured by Beauclair, who track debit card sales in high streets. And they kept that February result came in at 4% below last year for February. So not a strong February at all. I mean, February last year wasn't strong in sales terms either. It was minus 5.1%. And amongst the five categories that account for the majority spending, so that's over 80% of spending, all sales in all of those five categories, which is fashion, food and drink, general retail, grocery, and health and beauty, all declined, albeit that health and beauty only declined by 0.7%, so virtually flat on last year, health and beauty. But very, challenging out there in the high street, definitely, and challenging across retail. Just to give, I think probably the most recent and the most current data I've got is actually on consumer confidence from GfK Nielsen, who actually they run a consumer survey asking people how they feel about things, the economy and their own finances, and they do that mid-month. So the results for March are actually in. So we're sort of a month ahead, but it's really helpful because it gives us the first inkling of what March might be like for retail sales, and confidence inevitably has dropped. We're now at minus 21 as the overall index score versus minus 19 in February. And the last time it was as low as that was in April last year at minus 23. And all of that drop really is around people's pessimism about the economic situation over the next year or so. And that impacts their views around buying big products. So then the major purchase index has dropped from minus 14 last month to minus 18. And the savings index, which is how much people, want to save, has gone up from 21 to 27. So people are definitely hoarding their money and saving and being cautious rather than spending.
And inflation was relatively steady, I think, in February, wasn't it?
Inflation stayed at 3%. But of course, that's the basket of goods,
Yep.
So housing and utilities were at 4.6%. Restaurants and hotels at 4%. Restaurants and cafes at 4.5%. There was some strong inflation in education because school fees have gone up of over 5%. So whilst, overall it's 3%, in some of the categories, it's actually much higher than that. Interestingly, in furniture and household, which of course people aren't, according to the GfK index, people aren't spending on large purchases. It's just 0.1%. And clothing and footwear is 0.9%. So I think that reflects some discounting in those sectors because people aren't spending as much.
So I suppose the big question comes then if February is just a cooling off period, or as we enter March, we get all the geopolitical stuff that starts to kick in, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in the next episode. So people, they won't have seen that coming, but it might be a prelude to what's going to come.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I particularly highlighted the GfK data for March, but in this month's chat, because it gives an indication of how people are feeling about the impact of, what's happening in the Middle East and, the inevitability of increases in price and therefore inflation. So we've already seen petrol prices go up. The mortgage lenders are very insecure around what's going to happen around interest rates, so they're pulling product. So there's generally just some jitters already, and that's going to flow through straight into March's numbers.
So when you might not have the figures exactly to hand, but the consumer GfK index is consumer confidence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been negative for, well, it's going to be years now rather than months. It almost tells back to lockdown, doesn't it? What is the world like when it's positive? What are the general traits that we see?
Well, it has been negative for a long time. We did get down to minus 13 on an index score in 2024, but then we had all the uncertainties around the government and Liz Truss and the budget and all that sort of impacted on it. So it's really struggled since then. It hasn't really. I'm just checking because I do have some historic data that goes way back, and I think the best time we had, actually, interestingly, was in recent times. Was May 2021 when we came out of lockdown at -9, and before that in 2018. Here we go, 2016. If we're searching for a positive number, we have to go back to 2016. March 2016, it was 0. And
so
actually,
almost 10 years by the next recording.
10 years, yeah, or virtually, 10 years to get to 0. So, but it was essentially single digit negativity all the way through to mid 17. Then it went to low double digits. Then 18, it fell back to single digit negativity, and it was low double digits for the next year or two. And then 2020, when COVID hit, it went to minus 34, would you believe?
Wow.
And then it fell back again, improved in May 2021 when we came out of lockdown too. And it was in July 2021 when everyone thought that the world was much better, it was minus 7. And in recent times, it's got to as low as minus 49 in September 2022. So, where we are at minus 17 or so, 21 is, compared to minus 49, it's looking reasonable, but it's not reasonable. It is pretty negative. Consumers feel, they lack confidence and have done for a long time.
10 years. Didn't realise that long.
I know, it goes quickly, doesn't it?
It does. And February, obviously, we all know is Valentine's Day, so one of the big calendar events in the year. Did that give any positive blip on Valentine's Day, or was it just kind of smooth with everything else that was going on?
I've never, all the data I've looked at for years and years and years, you can't really see it in the data because you tend to look at the month as a whole. Mm-hmm. And, it's a spending time. People go out for a meal, or they'll buy some flowers or a card. They may trade down on Valentine's Day rather than buy the very expensive flowers. They'll buy cheaper flowers,
Cheaper the day after, folks, just for next year's reference.
Oh, I bet that went down well, Simon. Oh, Emma, lovely. How nice. So we never really see that impact. But of course, it is important for retail. It creates a point in the calendar and, it creates a spending opportunity. So I would never decry it and say, it's a valuable place. And actually, food and drink spend, which, plays straight into it, whilst, customers declined and as did transactions across the month, the average transaction value went up by 3.9%. So above inflation and above all sectors as a whole, which went up by 1.8%. So people did spend more in February on food and drink than they did last year. And the biggest increase in the average transaction value was actually in health and beauty, which encompasses gyms and wellness and all of those stuff, as well as beauty products. And that went up by 6.3. So people were spending more. And that probably dovetails with price increases in gyms and things as well. So people end up spending more money on those to keep going. So there have been increases in spending in some areas, but generally spending as a whole has dropped.
And there's some big things on the horizon. So without getting too far ahead, so 1st of April, which is odd because it's midweek. So good luck to all those payroll people out there. National living wage increases kick in. So
they do.
Over 21s will go from $12.21 to $12.71 an hour, which is 4.1% increase. And the national minimum wage for those 18 to 20 will go from £10 to £10.85, which is an 8.5% increase. So some big cost wins, but this year that's coupled with the first part of the UK Employment Rights Act. I won't go into the detail. It's been well publicised and it's been slightly watered down from where it was. But the kind of highlights for those that don't know, you probably need to have a bit of a look because it's coming. It's almost here. Unfair dismissal. So previously it was a 2-year qualifying period, moves to 6 months. There's changes on statutory sick pay, earnings limits and waiting periods. Paternity, parental and bereavement leave becomes a first day right. There's a whole bunch of stuff around 0 hours contract, trade union recognition, fair work agency, gender pay gap equality. So some really good things in there, but some really challenging things in terms of new recruits that are coming into the business. And some of those people will have already pre-qualified for those new rights in recent recruitment. So a really, really important piece of legislation. And this is just the first part of that bill because it goes beyond and there's a whole bunch of stuff planned for 2027, which hasn't been finalised by the government yet. So two other big bits. Good news stuff. So we've got the Retail Technology Show 22nd, 23rd of April in Excel. So we're there again. So if you're around, come and say hi. It'd be good to see you. And we've also got our first benchmarking report, which is being launched at the Retail Technology Show on the 22nd of April. So Sue James and the team have worked really hard on pulling together some data, looking at key trends and insights around lost and unproductive time, cost to put stock to the shelves. And we'll be releasing that on the 22nd, available to download, and you'll see stuff on our socials about it. But that was something you recommended doing, Di. So thanks for the push. The team are delighted with all the hard work they inherited as well.
Good. I'm pleased. I mean, it'll be interesting. It is very timely, actually, very, very timely to get that out into the market and give more people more information and more trend information about what's happening, because you need that context.
Definitely. So we'll pause there. We'll be back to talk about March next month, which I think is going to be interesting because that's when all the geopolitical stuff really starts to kick in, and we'll see what's happened since. So thank you once again, Di, and we will catch up next month.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Simon.